Hi, my name is Lisa Parker, and I'm the Director of Alumni Career and Business Services for the MSU Alumni Association. Here with me, of course, today is my partner in crime, Dave Isbell. And one of the things we really wanted to take time to talk with you about is the fact that we are frequently approached to help Spartans with resume reviews, which we're happy to do. In fact, we do have grad students on hand to help with that. But we honestly don't feel that our reviewing your resume is the best strategy for you. And we'd like to explain that to you so you don't think we're just trying to wash our hands as Spartans needing some help. So Dave, what's your take on what would be the ideal way to get your resume reviewed for really effective feedback?
Well, I'm going to back up for a second. Like, the basic nuts and bolts of how to do a resume, anybody can find that just by doing a Google search. I mean, there's a lot of good information out there. There's tons of good books. So the basic kind of nuts and bolts, that's pretty much what we help with, is the simple, like, basics. We can't really go beyond that because every resume on every occasion should be specific to the company, to the industry, to the occupation. It's impossible for me to know about everything that's out there. And so it really is beneficial to kind of get a host of people that have hired for a position like what you're applying for, or people who have, had a little more experience down the road in the occupation than what you're trying to get into. Something like that. I think you're going to get more kind of bang for your buck by working with somebody like that than opposed to me, who's just kind of more like a generalist. I can't give you specifics that you really need to have a really good resume.
Right, and in my mind, you need a focus group. You need people who are acquainted with the industry that you're applying to, who have some similarities to the type of decision maker who might be reviewing your resume, the background of that decision maker. You probably also want somebody with a general HR background just to get that person's take should they be on the screening side of your resume. But I absolutely agree, Dave. Every situation is absolutely unique. And it's going to depend on the company. It's going to depend on what's asked of you at that company, what's their mission, what region of the country it's in, to be able to give you honest, good feedback about what's working with the language that you've chosen, are you on target with the message in terms of what you're selling and in the order that you're selling it. And that is a case by case. Whereas when we get requests to have resumes reviewed, it's typically individuals that are wanting us to take a look at a resume that they are using broadly. And it really is difficult. We can say, yeah, hey, that looks good on paper, font looks nice, it's not overly crowded, you didn't go on for 4 pages, but that's really the extent of it. What really brought it home for me was I had a cover letter that I was helping with a month or so ago, and the person had started the letter with howdy, and I was just shocked. Here's our student laughing. Hi, Colleen. Howdy, yeah. And I told that person, you don't start a cover letter with howdy. Well, the interesting thing is at Michigan State, we just took a visit to Texas A&M for their alumni association, and howdy is actually a big deal down there. That's how they start all of their correspondence. And so now I'm wondering if that individual that I was working with also had some ties to Texas. Whereas, when you're writing that cover letter, that howdy might actually get you in the door. I don't know that, because we're here in East Lansing, Michigan, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, so...
And the other thing I would also say is that it's really important for you to have your own voice.
Yes.
So if you pay someone else to write the cover letter or your resume, it's not going to be in your voice. It's not going to sound like you. A lot of people try to put in these fancy words, like one of the overrated ones that's utilize. Do you really use utilize when you're talking to students? I mean, just say use.
I'm not sure I utilize that word very often.
I don't utilize it, however. But, I mean, so you don't have to do the fancy resume language. You can have your own voice on it, but it needs to sound professional. So when you get a professional resume writer, it's going to look very cookie cutter and sound like everybody's, which is not what you want.
Unless you're really good at conveying the message of what it is you're targeting and what you bring to the table. And that I'd like to turn around to the point of what we really are good for. If you're turning to the MSU Alumni Association Career Services team for a resume review, that's okay. Not your best strategy, it's okay. But really where we come in as your valuable ally, most times people who need help with figuring out how their resume looks, what they really need help with is figuring out what they have to sell about themselves and even what they want to do. And that's why these resumes are falling flat. It's because the thought behind the preparation of the resume isn't where it needs to be in order to develop an effective message.
That's the key thing, and often you just, again, it goes back to it would be more helpful if you had someone in your industry to talk through that with, because they're going to know the vernacular. I can pull stuff out of you, and I can help you think through concepts, but I can't get as specific as you need. The other thing is if you're hiring a resume writer, I would watch out for that. I've had a lot of clients come to me that have paid $300, $400, $500 for someone to write their resume, and it's some English major that just graduated. Yes, they can string verbs and nouns together, but they don't really know your occupation. They don't really know you, and they're not going to take the time to do that.
Well, but I want to be fair. There are good resume
Yes.
writers out there. I'm not knocking that as a whole. But again, it comes back to the quality of the information you're giving that writer, because they may not be a career strategist. So they may
Sure.
not hear the inconsistencies in terms of what you're trying to sell and what you're delivering as evidence. So,
Right.
so that's
But at that
definitely-
point, if you can tell your own story, you probably should be able to write it too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then, in thinking about friends reviewing resumes, because I have, in the times when I have worked with people on resumes and I've given constructive feedback, I frequently hear, well, I showed my resume to all my friends and nobody had a problem with it. Typically, when our friends are looking at our resumes, they are looking for grammatical errors, formatting errors, and they're not necessarily paying attention to the fact that you're saying you're going for a managerial role, but all of the functions that you've listed on your resume are more in a support nature versus a leadership role. Or you've been a manager, but you're trying to show that you are actually open and interested in some lower level stuff. You don't want to run the show anymore, but you don't realize that all the layers of the messaging that you put into your resume really paints you as the picture who should be running the show.
Right.
And that's not something a friend is going to catch.
And it goes back to what I was saying about kind of hiring somebody to do it. You have the right to interview that person. You should know where their expertise is coming from. So it might be a little bit of the writing, the mechanics of the writing, and it might be a little bit about what is actually being said in the content.
Yeah.
Both are important, but you have to make an educated guess about that. To come to someone like me who's a generalist, yes, I've seen a million resumes I've hired, but I only have limited information. Unless you want to be a social worker or something that's similar to what I've done and what I do, I can't really give you specifics.
Yeah, and that's just being honest. I mean, we're not trying to give you the sense that your team at Alumni Career Services is incompetent, but we just need to be honest with you and have you appreciate that the best person to give you the answer on how your message is going to resonate with your targeted audience is a member of that target audience or somebody who's closely affiliated with them. So that's our word today on resumes and resume reviews. We definitely want you keeping your eyes on our area. We're trying to produce a number of webcasts for you, blog posts for you. We're working on some live streams of entrepreneurs coming to campus. Yes, we do like to talk to you about career-related management, career management, trying to figure out what your next step should be. That's great for Dave. Trying to figure out, you know what you're aiming for, but how do I get there? That's me. So we're your Alumni Career Services team, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great day.